This is the Business Owners IT Podcast with Anthony Gerasch and Ryan Carter, where tomorrow's technology meets today's conversations.
I am Tony Gerasch.
And I'm Ryan Carter, and this is the Business Owners IT Podcast.
A podcast where we discuss tips, tricks, and solutions for business owners involving all things tech.
All right, as promised, in our last episode, we talked a little bit about our QBRs, and then we brought up an insurance form review. So I think it's time that we go through an insurance form. We've actually got a pretty good one that John will bring up at some point. Tony's going to talk about it. The reason why I'm happy to bring this up is because recently I had a business owner send me their insurance form. This happens a lot. But this is a newer client, and they sent it to me, but they had their insurance person send it to me, which that's not off. That happens. But the thing was the guy was trying to fill it out for him. And a business owner stopped them and sent it to me, which was very smart on his part. But I have to bring this up, and Tony hopefully can back me, is that don't let your insurance person
Absolutely not
do your form. They're not in IT. They don't know the stuff that we're talking about. And oh, you know what? I'm just going to steal a quote because during COVID, I watched this a lot, and hopefully some of you guys did too. But the Tiger King, in one of the episodes, he said, "I will never financially recover from this. And that is what will happen if you let your insurance person fill out your insurance form." So you know what? Let's dive right in and get to it. So Tony, I'm sure you got a lot to talk about here.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? An insurance guy, an insurance broker, his job is to sell insurance, right? His job's not to fill out this for you. There's a lot of tricky questions in there, right? I'm looking at one now, and, John may actually bring it up here sometime and show you. But it's a pretty complicated form for a small business. I mean, it starts out, one of the first things it starts out with after you get past all of the financial information, anything is, previous cyber incidents. And they have a list of these things that, that are there. Some of these you may not even know if you had or not, like a denial of service attack. You may or may not even know if somebody was trying to do that for you. But there's a list of them, right? And it's like cyber extortion. That's ransomware, right? That's just a fancy word. Have you ever been ransomed? Malware infection. I mean, what is a malware infection? I mean, is one computer or is it all computers, right? Is it spread across the network, right? Those types of things. Data loss, privacy breach, denial of service attack. Like most people won't even know if they had a denial of service attack. Then they got ransomware again. So cyber extortion and ransomware are kind of the same thing. It's the same thing. You want your data back? Pay the ransom. Mm-hmm. Do you not want us to, if you don't pay the ransom, we're going to take all your data that we stole from you and put it on the internet? I mean, it's the same thing. That question, cyber extortion and ransomware is the same question. IP infringement, and then theft of funds. So, those are the previous incidents that they mark. But a lot of people won't even know the definition of some of those to answer it.
Yeah, and some of the questions are super broad.
Right.
I'm trying to find one here. I had it marked, but obviously I just...
Well, the first, there's some that are really broad, right? So,
one of them is always, actually one of the broad ones is, do you use MFA?
Yeah.
Do you use MFA for all remote access, or do you use MFA for email? It's some of them are just broad, like do you use MFA for all computer access or just all access? So then
MFA is two-factor authentication or multiple-factor authentication.
And a lot of times, I mean, especially now in this day and age, it's almost like instantaneous when you put it on your email. You almost have to forcefully take it away to not have it on your email. And some people just think that's what the MFA that they're talking about. But sometimes they're talking about the MFA actually when you sign in on your computer using an application like Duo or something like that to do the MFA on your computers. And that's where the broadness of these questions can really...
Yeah, what are they talking about MFA, multiple factor authentication on? Your bank accounts, your email, logging into your computers, getting into your... some of your websites that you might be using for to manage your business. Talking about one of the broad questions here I'm going to read this one to you. It says, please describe your approach towards protecting sensitive and confidential information. Examples, access control, encryption, network segmentation, etc. And then they give you a block to fill that out. Well, there's no normal business owner that's not in IT going to be able to answer that question accurately. It's just not going to happen.
You want another one?
Sure.
What's your secure score, Tony?
Yeah, that's another one, right? What's my secure score? Well, Microsoft has a, you can go to, I think it's securescore.microsoft.com or something. Every Microsoft 365 tenant has a secure score. And, insurance carriers are getting, are finding out about this, and they're actually putting it on the application, right? So typically when we see these questions, right, our first approach is to tell what the score is, right, and then try to increase that score to an acceptable amount before the actual insurance form has to be filled out. Because the answer is they want it to be as secure as can be.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So we want to. Another thing that we do as when Ryan and I get these applications is we verify everything, right, and then we also create documentation inside of our ticketing system for it. And the reason we do that is because if they say, hey, you checked off that you had multiple factor authentication on everything and you don't, and they don't want to pay the claim, what we can do is go and show them back that, hey, on this date when we filled this out, we had multiple factor authentication on everything. Mm-hmm. So we have to, we kind of keep track of that so that if something does happen, we can prove that we actually checked that we did it.
Yeah, and I mean, I've brought up in previous episodes, one of our clients, before they were with us, filled out the form themselves, and then there was a breach, and then they brought me along with the insurance company, when we're talking about it and trying to figure things out, and then they asked a question about, I don't think it was MFA, but it was another question, and I said no, but they had checked on the form, yes. I didn't check that form, but they did, and what happened was that that moment that claim was denied because of that. So that's why you need to know what you're checking yes and no to, because obviously when Tony and I do it, we're going to take screenshots to prove that when it comes time.
Yeah.
And hopefully it never does.
Yeah, and inside of these forms, right, you see a lot of questions about backups, right? And, provide details on how you store your backups of critical data, right? Just because you're in the cloud doesn't mean you don't need a backup of your data, right? So, just because you're in Microsoft 365 and you're using OneDrive and maybe SharePoint and Teams and all that, and you still need to back that up. I mean, it's still, so you answer that question, how do you back it up? And, the answer, I'm in the cloud, I don't need a backup, is not the right answer.
Yep, that's correct.
So,
you know what? Did you mention who this form was from that we've been going through?
Yeah, so this is the CFC, Cyber Private Enterprise. It's an insurance application form. We see this form a lot. It's probably one of the most thorough forms out of all of the ones we see. There are some that aren't this thorough, right? But this form is really, really thorough and asks a lot of good questions.
Yeah, and if you were to use this as a framework for yourself on what you're going to do, I know we push the CIS framework and all that, but if you were going to use this as what you need to do as a business, to get yourself insurance and also just to be protected, following this is going to get you pretty darn close to, being as protected as you can.
Yeah, I mean, they're asking about endpoint detection and response. Which is
SOC.
good. Yeah, Security Operations Center they're asking about. They ask about perimeter security, right? When you think of perimeter security, what do you think of? A normal business owner doesn't even know what perimeter security means, but when I ask Ryan what he thinks of perimeter security,
Firewall.
it's a firewall, right? That's basically all it is, right? And do you have a next-gen firewall? So I don't know, there are firewalls out there. I was just asking recently, we had a customer that wanted to do something with Ubiquity. Is Ubiquity a next-gen firewall? Do they have the software blades in there now, or is it still just a router that has some stuff?
No, it's going to be a router that has some stuff. I mean, they've got it in there, but the protections are there, but they're not the protections you need, and the updates aren't as thorough. You got to physically do it yourself. So I don't consider them a top dog when it comes to next-gen firewalls.
Yeah. Another thing that's in here says, how often do you conduct a penetration testing of your network architecture? What is a penetration test, right? Is that a vulnerability scan? No, a penetration test is actually where somebody tries to penetrate your network. So sometimes you'll see for credit cards, right? You got to be compliant with the credit cards to get a better rate or whatever, and they'll do a vulnerability scan, and you have to fix certain things in that vulnerability scan, right? That's a vulnerability scan. It's not a penetration test.
Right. Penetration test. You've said it many times, Tony. It's like if someone physically sitting behind the keyboard trying to get in your network or social engineer you and all that good stuff. Another great question that's brought up here is patch management. It's not a question that says, do you do patch management? The question in this form, which I like, is please describe your patch management process and how you ensure that critical patches are applied in a timely fashion. If your MSP is filling this out for you, you now have a great idea on how your computers are patched and something you can always go back to. Because this one here, I put a paragraph in every time. I pretty much copy and paste it because it's for a lot of different ones that I have the same thing. But that policy it's applied to our clients, and it's just a good question on how to get your patch management and how you do it instead of just saying, yeah, I do it.
Yeah. And then there's another one. This is a pretty good question, right? This is a pretty good thing. It says, do you use network monitoring solution to alert your organization to suspicious activity or malicious behavior on your network? The answer is going to be no for 99% of the people, right? Because they're talking about network. They're just not talking about individual computers, right? That's a SIM. That's a device that collects your logs, right? And then goes to a security operations center, and then they notify you if they see some anomalies. So, this is a really thorough...
You'd even ask about application whitelisting.
Yes, application whitelisting, yeah.
One of our favorites. We're still not getting paid for it, so I'm not going to say their name, ThreatLocker.
Yeah. Next episode, we're going to talk about end-of-life software, right? Do you have end-of-life software support, end-of-life or end-of-support software? Well, Windows 10 in the next episode, we're talking about Windows 10. We're going to talk about the end of life there, right? So there are people that still have old software. I have customers that have Windows XP. It's on their shop CNC machine, right? And they're not going to pay to upgrade it. I mean, it's just too expensive. So, that's so you would have to mark yes. But then you could also say, hey, we segregate this from the network. It's not connected to everything else. You could come up with a acceptable risk in how you're protecting yourself.
Yeah, and that's what we put. I mean, we segregate those networks, and we put it. There's a nice, especially in these forms, there's a nice spot for that. So yeah, I do give it up for these people.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's other things, right? You can maybe go through the list of all of the softwares that they mention here.
Yeah, security awareness training, application whitelisting. I mean, back to your next gen firewall. There's a lot, and the best part is they give a section after it to talk about what software you actually use for that. So, I enjoy these kind of meetings with our business owners to talk about their posture after going through this, because then I can show them what they can do to get better.
Yes.
So it just works out, and I feel safer when our clients fill this form out correctly and get it done properly. But I am going to lead to my tip of the week is. As a business owner or as an MSP doing this, just be careful for those confusing questions to make sure you're answering them correctly. And I just go back to the easy, confusing one is, do you use MFA on everything?
Exactly. And, you may know what the answer is that they want. They want you to say yes. But if it's not yes, then just say no and just move on. They're not going to deny you coverage just because you don't meet one of their criteria. They may also base the rating how much you pay on it, right? So, but answer the questions correctly. Make sure that you have somebody that understands the language, answers them for you. And if you're a customer of ours, always forward them to us.
That's right. Fill them out correctly, and you will be able to financially recover from attack.
There you go. Other than that, we could talk about this for hours, right? We talked about frameworks before. We talked about these things. It's very important. It's important to have cybersecurity insurance, but it's also important to answer the questions correctly.
And if you're filling these out and you have questions, drop in the questions down below, right?
Yeah,
in the comment section. That's what we want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Drop in the comment. We'll answer.
Yeah.
We will.
Yep. So, all right, I guess that's it. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining into the Business Owners IT Podcast, and I hope to see you next week.
Yep, we'll see you next week where we talk about why IT guys love Windows 11.
Unique computing solutions. Your IT challenges solved.